Please enjoy getting to know the Calibrate ambassador, Alan Shapiro. Good morning, Alan. How are you?
I'm really good, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. First question, Alan. Coffee, tea, or something else?
Ooh, if it weren't early in the morning, it would definitely be something else, Matt, namely bourbon, but it's morning.
Are you a photographer, a filmmaker, or a little bit of both?
Right now, I am I am just a photographer. I spent the early part of my career in general advertising making commercials. So while I was a creative guy, there was a lot of filmmaking as part of my day to day. I like the ability to just focus on a single image or a sequence of images that are stills these days.
Hmm.
It relaxes me. I need to be relaxed.
While you're doing this, while you're making your still photography, for whom do you make your art?
Right now, I do it for myself, which is what I hope everyone's answer consistently is. You always do it for yourself. But I'm fortunate and very grateful to have a number of clients that come to me. So I split my time between commission work and client work and personal work.
When you do your work, what do you get out of it?
It's like therapy. It's like exercise. It is my head. My brain is a carnival. And so there's always something bouncing around or multiple things bouncing around. And when I pick up a camera, which was, for me, it was a gift from someone who cared very deeply about me and was worried about my mental health because I was getting so stressed. This is back in the advertising days that he gave me a camera. For me, I get escape. I get focus. I get the ability to just let everything fall away and see what's in front of me. If I'm finding things, and if I'm making things, it's just this. It's playtime. It's putting elements together and looking at the relationships and looking at the color combinations and looking at the mood and the emotions that I'm trying to evoke. And it's just putting that all together. And it literally is play, whether I'm working with clients or just for my own sanity.
It sounds incredibly enriching.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now, when you're doing client work, what do they get out of it?
They get the joy of working with someone who totally understands the challenge going in, because again, my advertising background, my marketing background allows me to get to the heart of a challenge visually, conceptually. What are we trying to communicate? What are we trying to sell? What are we trying to put out in the universe that people may or would be surprised by, or would say, oh, that makes perfect sense, but that they're seeing it in a way that catches them. So they're getting that level of commitment. They're also getting the joy that I have in discovery. I tend to be very passionate about everything I do, and they get the benefit of that. I hope they get the benefit of that.
I'm sure they do. Now, you do a lot of things that are attractive to you, but do you find yourself returning to certain themes over and over in your work?
I do. I have some themes that are ridiculous, and I have some themes that are absolutely, that just bring me smiles. I have a catchphrase when I'm teaching that blueberries make everything better. So I love working with blueberries, whether I'm working solely with blueberries or they invariably end up making little guest appearances in a lot of my work just to make me smile. I have a collection of doll parts, heads, and dismembered piece parts that I love playing with. And I joke that future generations, my family is gonna wonder what Grandpa was up to. But it just it sparks joy, and it provides an opportunity to create things that people talk about. And I wonder what the meaning is. In some ways, it's like working out my yayas. In other ways, it's just looking for a reaction.
Oh, that's wonderful. I've seen your work with animals,
Uh-huh.
a lot of macro work,
Yeah.
and textures and color. And I guess each of those has a particular attractant to you. But is there one thread that runs through all of them that you've been able to identify?
I love color, and I love, and that could be to an extreme, to evoke a mood, to really show you what is there in its purest sense. And conversely, I love the absence of color, because I think things become very striking when they're reduced to monochrome, to just pure, shades of gray, and we can see the textures. I am also, the older I get, the more I'm intrigued by the aging process around us. In my macro work, it's flowers as they go through their life cycle. In walk around mode, it is the distressed textures that surround us. Those two things have been consuming me of late, like these past months now.
Well, since we're on the topic of color, can you remember that aha moment when you realized it was essential to establish your color workflow?
It's not necessarily a secret, but it's something that I just put out there because I worry about it a little bit. Back when I was old enough to be going to an eye doctor for eye tests, they discovered I had what then was called color blindness, what is now called color deficiency. So, there were those tests with all the dots in a circle, and you would see 27 and I see 419. And so there was something off. So I always worried about that. But, flash forward through art school, through a professional career that involved creating campaigns in still and print. And it never really showed up, but there was always a worry. For me, the need for color control, and I'm a little bit of a color control freak, comes from those moments, fortunately, that were in the past, where I would create something that I was really proud of and I would send away for a print, or I would decide to print on my own here because that is something that I, love to do. And it wouldn't match. It would come back, and here I spent whatever the amount of money on a professional print, and what I thought was going to be on, coming back based on what I saw on my monitor didn't match at all. So there was like a waste of money. It was like, okay, there's a fail. What did I do wrong? And so the dive into color control across my workflow became a priority. Now add a client need on top of that. So when you're working by yourself, it's one thing, and you can just sort of forgive yourself and start over and say, all right, chalk it up to whatever. When you're working with clients and when you're working on a deadline, the color has to be what the color needs to be for their brand or their collection of, whether it's food or fashion or whatever. Color matters, and people deserve to have their colors respected and be precise. And so we as photographers, as creators, need to know how to ensure that consistently.
So how do you do that? What steps do you take and how often?
So I have a color target. I actually have 4 different color targets from my macro work. I have a passport. It's not even a passport. It's a color checker nano. I have a mini for slightly bigger work. I have my passport, which is always with me at all times. And then I have a classic target, and that is for my capture workflow, because whenever I'm out and about and the scenes change and the situations change, I take a reference shot and I have it for when I go and I need to edit. And then I work across multiple monitors. I do travel. I have a desktop system. I have a laptop. I have an and I even, when I go to the office, I have a third desktop there. So all of those need to match, otherwise I can't work across them. So I will profile them. I have the new Display Pro HL because I'm working with a high luminance monitor, so that's where the HL comes in. And every 2 weeks, like clockwork, I profile my entire systems, plural, all my monitors, and make sure that everything is as accurate as possible. Then when I go in and edit, I'm creating custom profiles based on the sequence of images and using the target to create a custom profile, so I know I'm starting from a neutral place. Now, I know that sounds in discussion like this like an arduous process. It literally takes 30 seconds to shoot the target. Not even. It takes 1.5 seconds because it's hanging around my neck and I'm just holding it out. To profile my monitors, it's 2 minutes a monitor, maybe 2.5 minutes every 2 weeks. Not a big deal. To create a custom profile, it's 30 seconds. I go to that reference target, I export from the Calibrite software, from Lightroom to Calibrite, it creates a custom profile. I'm done. And then I come back, and then all I do is I click with my eyedropper to get my white balance, and I'm totally neutral. And if I had the ability right now to show you the difference, it would be an aha moment for everyone watching.
Thank you for that. It's a great testimonial as to why it's important and how much time you invest in that.
It's funny. I don't have time to waste. I have unlimited time when I'm feeling creative to do what I need to do. But I don't want to guess when I'm getting to that neutral place, when I'm wondering if there's a color cast that I'm not seeing, because our eyes lie to us. Our brain will very quickly compensate for the minute shifts that unfortunately get magnified as we edit and then print. And, so I don't have that time to waste. I'm an impatient guy, and I'd rather have much more time for the fun creative side of it.
Now, you mentioned that you travel and you do travel photography. If you could be anywhere right now, where would it be?
Oh my God. On a really large boat sailing into all the beaches that I've heard about that I never got a chance to sail into because the bigger boats you were on couldn't get there. And if I was in a country working, there wasn't time to take that extra few days and get to it.
Yeah.
So I need to be barefoot. I need to be in shorts and a t-shirt for the rest of my life. And wherever I can get to that allows that wardrobe to happen with a camera around my neck and a drink waiting for me when I get home, that's happiness.
If you could give an elevator pitch to your 20-year-old self, what would it be?
Oh, take the extra days, no matter where you are in your work life, to do something that sparks a little bit of joy. Travel, add an extra day to stay and see the strange city you find yourself in, to make time for exploration, not just career growth.
That's sage.
Yeah. And I found myself as I was, starting out and going through my career, always being in a hurry to get to what's next in that career. And the family that I had was obviously very important, and that was the other priority. But there wasn't any me creative time. There wasn't any feeding my soul that came consistently. And now I am doing as much as I can to ensure that I feed my soul and that I cascade this down to other people, because I feel like I had an amazing life until now, and it's not even close to being over. But I just the teaching side of me wants to pass on some of these tidbits for whatever they're worth.
Speaking about aspiring creatives, what question are you asked most often by them?
They always talk about the gear, which I find is a little bit off-putting, because I think it's like asking a chef what stove they use and what pots they use, and it's like not what inspires you. So I try and correct that. It's like it has nothing to do with the gear. It has to do with the way we see and how open we are to seeing. So a lot of people say, well, where do your ideas come from? That's like the next question. And that leads to a bigger conversation about just letting things bang around in your brains, and how do we collect fodder, and how do we allow ourselves the space to be purely creative. And I spend a lot of time teaching that and studying methods for letting your brain totally loose to see what happens, both for traditional problem solving and just for random creative inspiration.
How do you foster and protect that creative space? What steps do you take?
That's a really good question. I've become a little bit selfish of late, where I make sure that I have, no different than a runner or someone who is a gym rat who is consistently going to the gym. I am out shooting literally every day at 6 a.m., for a few hours, and then I get back and I start my regular day. And on weekends, there is always creative time. And then invariably, there's also editing time. And I find those two things, not just as a photographer, but as someone who needs to percolate, who needs to let whatever's going on in his brain bang around. When I am shooting and when I'm editing, I find that it is my most creative time. So I force myself to schedule that into my day in and day out.
That's inspiring. Are you working on any skills right now that you're growing?
I'm always playing around with new editing techniques. I think that's one thing that as a teacher, it's not easy for me, it's not easy to teach seeing the way I see. I can talk about that, but that's the last thing I want an aspiring photographer to do. I don't want them to be me. I want them to be themselves. Editing is one of those skills that I think is critically important, particularly as you grow and want to work with clients. Especially, you need to know how to do certain things. You need to know how to transform the image that you've created in your camera into something that makes a client happy, either because of a particular mood or color palette. And so editing is critical. Now, on top of that, there's creative editing techniques that I love to play with because they bring me this different level of joy. I grew up as a youngster painting and drawing, and at one point wanting to be an illustrator. So that changed, obviously. But the ability to sit down with a graphics tablet and just literally paint as part of my editing process is so relaxing and such fodder for that creative process that I want to be protecting, to quote you.
Wonderful. Well, I'm sure everybody will enjoy seeing the work that we're going to include as part of this video presentation. Alan generously lent us some images. You can see what his work looks like. But if they want to know more about you, where can they see more of your work and perhaps where to join you for your educational opportunities?
Okay, so my website, which is where all my work is, it's like a vast walk-in closet. It needs to be sorted through, but it becomes a catch-all, is AlanShapiroPhotography.com. Alan is ALAN. And my Instagram is Alan Shapiro 515. And that's where my daily rants and ramblings go. I love to share my thinking, my thought process, a little story or two, in addition to the creative work that I've chosen to share that day. So it's a combination of words and pictures. Sometimes they mesh, sometimes they're totally at odds with each other. But again, it's two parts of the brain that we want to exercise. So no different than an upper body and a lower body workout or strength training and aerobics. Writing about your work and having the visual expression of it, I think they both should be practiced. So you can see and read that there.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm glad that you brought that up. I think personally that it's important that people know how to articulate themselves. And the more you practice, the better you get at it. Talking about your work is an incredibly valuable skill too. So everybody take heed and listen to that one. Alan's got a gem there.
Yeah, talking about your work, printing your work for those still photographers. Yeah. Something transforms when you put what you're seeing on screen onto a piece of paper or some material, a substrate of some sort. And it shows you different things about your work that informs and lets you go back and change or perfect that work. So I encourage people to try printing for themselves, because there's something incredible, not just about seeing something projected with photons, but about holding something in your hand that you've created and being able to give that to somebody else.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Alan, for joining us for this conversation. I hope that everyone feels a little bit closer to you and your work, and they get a chance to explore it more. And thanks to Calibrite for hosting these sessions with the ambassadors. There's a wonderful group of people here. This is just the first of many to come. Thank you, Alan. We hope you have a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Calibrate, for making my workflow better.
Everybody have a wonderful day, and we'll see you during the next presentation.